We'll be beginning tonight with, of course, the mayoral candidates, the incumbent, Dr. Satish Hiremath, the challenger, Patrick Straney. We're going to go alphabetically with opening remarks and then reverse that order for closing remarks. Without further ado, Dr. Satish Hiremath.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you all for being here, and thanks for inviting me here. I think it's going to be vitally important that you really know what the vision and the plan is for each one of us, and then you can choose accordingly as to who you see as the best fit candidate. I'm a longtime practicing dentist in the town of Oro Valley. My practice will celebrate 22 years in October. I have 3 kids who live here in the town of Oro Valley, ranging from 19 to 8. So my life gets very, very busy. And I initially ran because in about 2007, 2008, there were about 1.5 of my patients that were losing their jobs or their spouses or their friends or family members. And I just felt that local government should be more insular and keep our citizens better protected than what happens at the state and the federal level. And I didn't think that the foreclosure rates or the unemployment rates should mirror state or national numbers. And so I threw my hat in the ring and I won, and we inherited a $3 million deficit in 2010, and I'm proud to say that in 4 years later we have a slight surplus, and we've managed to do that all without sacrificing our public safety, our infrastructure, and most importantly without a property tax. And so it's my plan to continue the forward progress. We are nowhere near out of the recession yet. It's still very tenuous at best. And I'd like to continue to be your mayor and continue the positive progress that the town of Oro Valley is making. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's a great pleasure to see so many friends and people that are enduring yet another forum. I commend you for doing that. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to get to know you and have you get to know a little bit more about me. My wife Pat and I are 10-year residents in Oro Valley. We built our home here and have no intentions of leaving. My career prior to moving here was about 38 and a half years with a very large organization called General Motors in Delphi. I had regional responsibilities and also product line responsibilities, both foreign and domestic. I've had within those large organizations, primarily in the manufacturing side of the house, the functions that exist in the town all reported directly to me in those businesses as well. HR, finance, planning, security, et cetera, et cetera. So I do have a fairly good working knowledge of that. The last 7 years, I have been very involved with the Rancho Vistoso Master Plan community, kind of tempering my hard business side with learning something about community governance and community management. Rancho Vistoso, as most of you know, is a huge planned community, 34 neighborhoods, 14 of them are gated, 9 parks, hiking trails. All of the innovation, big businesses and the medium and small businesses, plus Oro Valley Hospital, are all part of Rancho Vistoso, so including both ends of the boulevard with the plazas and a business park in the middle. So I've learned a lot about community governance and interactions with the businesses in our community. I want very much to be part of the guiding Oro Valley to the next level of excellence, and I'd like to do that in a very sustainable, sound fiscal way, and we'll talk more about that after the wave is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Let's begin the questioning. I'm going to ask the first question. Dr. Hiremath, do you want to see Oro Valley grow? Yes or no? If so, what sectors do you want to see grow in our community?
I think Oro Valley is going to grow regardless. You know, we just happen to live in a community where people want to move into the community, but the trick is to finding that balance. You know, we all moved here for a certain quality of life, and we can't really disrespect or disregard really why we all moved here. Some of that is open space. Some of that is really strong public safety. Some of that is really just a good infrastructure that the town provides its residents. And, you know, again, the trick is, how do you do that in the absence of a property tax? The town of Oro Valley doesn't have a dedicated property tax. It's a county tax. And I think we've created a very sustainable way to balance that good growth that we're looking at doing. For instance, there's a town ordinance, which very few towns in the country have, called the Environmentally Sensitive Lands Ordinance, which we mandate developers when they develop a project to have X amount of space as open space. So that's one really thing about how we try to look for that balance in that growth. But Oro Valley is going to grow regardless, so it's really finding that trick with respecting people who are already here and trying to provide what residents want, in addition to trying to provide what future residents of our town are going to be looking for.
Thank you. Patrick Straney, do you want to see Oro Valley grow? Yes or no? And if so, what sectors of the community do you want to see grow?
Yes, I do support growth, and that includes residential and business growth. I support the growth in line with the general plan, and I also support the growth that mimics the kind of community of excellence that Oro Valley wants to be and currently is beginning to be. I want a community that you can tell the difference when you cross Ina and start heading down the road that you're entering a town of excellence without looking at the town marker on the side of the road. In order to do that, we need to work with developers up front and make sure they understand what it is to operate in Oro Valley, and certainly following the general plan, not just as a suggestion, but as a definite guide, if you will. And when we get requests for, let's say, deviation from the plans, we ought to think long and hard about how that ties into our community view and what our community thinks about that. We have to have that open dialogue with everybody in the community. That's the only way to get to the best answer relative to the vision. We shouldn't be granting zone changes, et cetera, without very, very active discussion by the community.
Let me follow up on that, Pat, if I may. A question about your philosophy. Do you see business and citizenry sitting on either end of the same seesaw? In other words, if we do something that's good for business, is it automatically bad for the resident? Please explain your answer.
Absolutely not. That's what this community of excellence is about. It's in balance. In fact, I'll tell you, economic development from my standpoint is contingent on a healthy community, diversity in all kinds of housing, people who are of different needs. Yes, there are apartments. Apartments are part of the equation. Yes, there are $3 million houses. That's the other end of the spectrum. All of this in between is also required to have what is needed for these large businesses in particular, is the medium range homes for their middle level staff and folks to come to Oro Valley to live, work, and play in a community of excellence. So I don't see where it's a trade-off at all.
Mayor Hiremath, what do you think? Does business and the citizenry sit on either end of the same seesaw? If something's good for business, is it automatically bad for the resident?
No, and I'll tell you, I'm a living example of that. I am a small business owner and I'm a resident. So how do you separate the two? And I think really what happens is that people make that mistake and they think that it has to be a choice. And really what we've been very fortunate enough to do over the last 4 years is, again, to find that balance. Whenever you tell somebody's right, then by default the other person's wrong. And so in the absence of a property tax, again, our mode of revenue, sustainable revenue, at best is cyclical in nature, which is sales tax. So how do you increase businesses? How do you not infringe upon those residents who don't have businesses and who came here for a certain quality of life? But I don't see one existing without the other. And I think over the past 4 years, we worked very, very hard in order to strike that balance. And i.e., 4 years later, this is the kind of community that you see. And, Pat had mentioned that when you drive into the town of Oro Valley, I guarantee you people don't look to see if they're in the town of Oro Valley visually by looking at that marker. They know they're in the town of Oro Valley. And I think over the last 4 years, we have found that balance, and I look to continue that balance.
Staying on the topic of growth, over the years, the town of Oro Valley has been known for being a retirement community. However, in the past few years alone, it's becoming more of a family and children-friendly community. Some examples are preparing for the transition with that investments in aquatic center, local parks, and recreation. How do you handle that new transition and still respect the past?
I don't see it as a new transition. I believe that the demographics in Oro Valley have changed to the younger end over the recent past, but as you track the data today, it's interesting that this comparison that we've been talking about, as many 18-year-olds and younger as there are 65 and over, if you look at the new data, the 65s and over are starting to, because of moving here, et cetera, start to edge up again. So it's a balance. The middle of that road is full of hardworking, good families. And, you know, I am certainly of retirement age. I love having a nice, well, balanced community with kids making noise and life. And there are also, expertise for people who are not of that same mind. So it's a good balance. We've got excellent community, not municipal community, but in our community facilities for people who want to be more serviced and not live in their own homes. So I just see it as a homogeneous neighborhood community that is good for the whole age group to find a sweet spot for them.
I unfortunately do think there is a transition because, you know, Oro Valley's goal since 1974 to about the mid-2000s was to really become the largest retirement community in the country. And all of a sudden in the mid-2000s when California had that housing boom, people were selling 1-2-bedroom houses for $1 million+ and moving to Nevada, moving to Arizona, buying 4,500 square foot houses for $250,000, and literally the demographics changed overnight. And I'm very sensitive to that because we as a society at large are very quick to dismiss history, i.e. the seniors. And I'm very protective of that group because they allowed me not to have what I have, but they allowed my children to have what they had. They knew everybody on their side of the street. If they got sick, the kids would mow the lawn, shovel snow, parents would cook meals. And that's missing in this community, and I'm very sensitive to that. Now, being sensitive to that, there are things that we've done in order to help balance that growth. But first and foremost on my mind is I do think that there's a perceived transition and that the seniors are being disrespected and they're being forgotten, but that couldn't be further from the truth. 2 years ago, I led the effort for the council to create the Veteran Support Initiative. The aquatic center that we built serves centenarians as well as 2 or 3-year-olds. The archery center the same way, the bike paths, the walking paths, the healthy lifestyles. So I think it's really trying to engage them back into the community and getting them to understand that just because we provide for one segment doesn't mean that we don't provide for the other demographic.
Thank you. Pat, you're the mayor of Oro Valley, and you've just learned that Ventana Medical Systems has named a new CEO. What do you do?
I go in and meet her, establish a working relationship, establish a mutual beneficial relationship like I did with everyone else that came to Innovation Parkway. There's always something that you learn by upfront, face-to-face, talking to the people that have the responsibility for a major operation in your community. And I did that because of my relationship in the community they moved into. I had something to do with it. And that same thing would be true as mayor, only on a larger scale. You don't miss the opportunity to build mutually satisfactory and beneficial relationships.
Dr. Hiremath, you've just learned Ventana has a new CEO. What do you do?
Do what I did with the last 3 CEOs. Give them time to acclimate and then say, when you're ready to talk, let's sit down and talk. and then really tell them what the town has to offer. Ventana is the largest employer for the town of Oro Valley. You're talking about a little over 1,100 people. And so a lot of the path that we've taken now has been because we've intentionally talked to CEOs, Dr. Ken Wertman at Sanofi, Ventana Roche, it was Mara Aspinall, and now there's a new individual coming in. And some of the things that came out of that is that they need more high-end quality apartments because now they're global. The average tenure of an employee that they get globally is between 9 and 12 months. So homes no longer is really what they're looking for. They're looking for a quick turnaround, a high turnaround, good public safety, good infrastructures, great schools, because the European culture is radically different than Western culture as far as educational requirements goes. Same with arts and culture. And that's why over the last 4 years, you've seen that push to where Oro Valley is intentionally attracting those kind of things so we can continue to attract high-paying, good jobs, biotech, bioscience, pharmaceutical sectors. And then more than that is to get them to commit to the town of Oro Valley because we're listening to what their requirements are and have them go out and help us recruit because we've created the kind of environment that's synergistic between those kind of companies and the town of Oro Valley.
Mr. Straney, let's build on that for a minute. Here we've got Ventana as our largest employer, an enormous economic engine. Now it's controlled by a company in Switzerland. What can we do as a community, and what would you do as mayor to help strengthen that relationship and keep those people here?
First of all, I guess I would sit down and understand their needs. I would talk to them about why they're there, what brought them here, and I would compare that to what I think brings a company to a community. I had that situation. I lived in Europe. I went to countries and had responsibility across 5 countries where people didn't speak the same language when I got there. So I know what the hard work is in terms of, let's say, building both sides of that relationship. I think a key ingredient is also making sure they understand just how important they are to our community, how important their residents are to our community, and what we have to offer. We have a wonderful community. It's a great place. If you have the opportunity to work on Innovation Parkway and live in Oro Valley, that's pretty sweet in terms of a lifestyle. And then all of the support for athletics, hiking, just a pure beauty of the area. We've got a lot of reasons for those folks to be there.
Dr. Hiremath, any further thoughts on strengthening the relationship with Roche Ventana?
You know, you have to take it one step further. The reality is that if you're dealing with a blind third party in a different part of the world, they can pull the plug because they basically control the purse strings. I think it's an easy sell for any CEO or president of any company that's here in the town of Oro Valley because they can physically see what we do for their employees and the type of lifestyle that they attract. One of the things that I've done is told both CEOs, Sanofi as well as Ventana, that if any of the management team or the executive leadership team from either Switzerland or Paris come into town, notify me. I'll drop everything that I'm doing and I'll go there and meet them. And I have done that with Sanofi as well as Ventana. And so to get those individuals to understand that what we're trying to do for their company, I think is really what the key to this whole thing is. Because when somebody else controls the decision-making process, then it becomes a numbers game on a black and white sheet of paper. And so what we try to do, or what I've tried to do, and I think we've done that very successfully, is talk to the management from these faraway companies or the parent company and sit down in front of them and say, look, tell us what you need and we'll get it done.
Dr. Hiremath, speaking as Innovation Park where Ventana Medical Systems is currently at, from a standpoint of Innovation Park, the office buildings and lab space, there's been some questions surrounding that. On the council, what would be your strategy to, say, attract biotech businesses and create more business in the community, such as Ventana Medical Systems?
I think it's to draw attention, and one of the advantages that I have throughout the state is that I sit on the Arizona Science Roadmap, Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee, and I will tell you, Oro Valley is very well received, and we are one of the very few hubs in the state of Arizona where intentionally the state points to our direction to say, if you're looking at doing a biotech or a bioscience or a big pharmaceutical company, don't discount Oro Valley. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is really trying to create the atmosphere where shovel ready doesn't mean bladed and graded and we're ready to put a shovel in the ground anymore to these companies. We now live in an environment where shovel ready says, hey, Mayor, do me a favor, give me a tour of your vacant building and let me see what you got. Well, we don't have a vacant building. And so what I'm trying to do is to leverage Neil Simon and Venture West Group, who own Innovation Park, is to build a shell, and we're almost there. And I think the other thing that we need to do a better job of is to leverage ASU. They are so far ahead in the forefront of trying to become a global university, dealing specifically with diagnostics and bioscience, biotech, and all this kind of stuff. And it's crafting that relationship with Arizona State University, and we've done that. So I feel very comfortable with the direction that the town of Oro Valley is heading.
Pat, what would be yours? Absolutely. When it comes to Innovation Park, where there's been some problems with office buildings, lab space, that kind of thing, on the council, what would your plan of attack be to attract biotech businesses and augment the critical mass with Ventana Medical Systems?
I still didn't understand the difficulty you referenced on the council.
There's been some issues with, say, lab space and office space and that kind of thing so far with Innovation Park. So what would be, say, your plan of attack to maybe address that and make Innovation Park even more successful?
Well, again, I think whatever the folks on Innovation Park need for the success of their business, they're going to share with us the role that we need to play in supporting that. But it goes to, again, what I'll call mutually beneficial connections and also regional connections. The U of A, with its connection with the strong medical field there, the biosciences that we've got here, everything between, used to be TGen and others up in Phoenix being the big players, and of course ASU as well. That synergy is something that we as a town need to make sure that we have a live, active involvement with them so that we are aware of the thinkings, not just of the folks that are in innovation now, but what's coming down the pike on any of the fronts that I just mentioned. So,
Thank you. Mr. Straney, let's turn our attention to the police department. The town's police budget has been a subject of contention at council meetings. What's your view of our police spending? Is it too much? Is it too little? Is it just right?
well, I'll answer this very cleanly. I haven't been here for 4 years. I don't take a position until I know some data. I don't go with the headlines. I think the police department's budget and spending has been turned into a headline, and I'm looking forward to being on the inside so that I can actually do the deep dive that I typically do. I'm an engineer. I need data. I need an understanding before I can before I would take a position on something like that. I know that the police, we have a fine police department. I love the community policing that we have. But the police department is like any other functional area of the town. They all need to stand up and be counted, their value against their expenditures for budget purposes. I don't see it as anything different.
Thank you, Mayor or Dr. Hiremath. The police budget, too much, too little, or just right?
I think it's just right. Every year we go through a very strong, strenuous vetting process. We have 2 study sessions where the town manager compiles all the data. He goes through with the finance team and goes in and really reviews the numbers, and then we have one study session, sometimes 2 study sessions. Councils gets to ask whatever questions they want to of whatever department, inclusive of the police department. The police department's not immune. but it's based on really what the requirements that the public requires. And in plain English, what that means is, we have a general plan, and in the general plan, it talks about public safety is 1, 2, or 3 in there. The recent poll that we took, the Your Voice, Our Future, public safety ranks continuously high. We have the #1 SRO department in the state of Arizona, so much so that it's looking at trying to be templated nationally. We have the lowest violent crimes per 1,000 in the state of Arizona. Public safety drives everything. And that's all I can tell you. And so when council members or individual communities of the members, individual community members try to make an issue out of it by throwing numbers around and saying it's 50% of the budget, it's $12 million, those are very, very large numbers. Public safety, like infrastructure, what people don't seem to forget is that you got to be 5 years ahead of time. You cannot staff for the current level of citizenry that you have, nor is it the same way with infrastructure. If you took 41,011 residents and divided that by, or $12 million, you're looking at less than $300 a year if we had to pay for it as individuals.
Mr. Straney, a vote came up this last year, and I had asked your opinion on this. Would you vote to have the chief of police answer directly to the town manager rather than the town council?
I would be glad to vote on that as soon as I saw the pros and cons and a reason for the subject to coming up. You have to know the facts behind it. So I will tell you again, I would need to dig into the detail, see the case for and against, and make my decisions based on that, along with the input of anyone that is knowledgeable on it.
Dr. Hiremath, would you have the chief answer directly to the town manager or to the town council?
It works fine just the way it is right now. And to be honest with you, again, the misperception out there in the general public is that the police chief is immune because there's no reporting structure. He's got to report to council. Council, I think, sometimes forgets, and I think people sometimes forget that council's there to set policy. And it's the town managers and the director's job to execute that policy. There's no department that I know of in the town of Oro Valley that doesn't get scrutinized every single year during the budget process, and the police department is one of them. So the question you have to ask yourself is, why is there such a large push for the police chief to report to the town manager? And that's a fair question to ask yourself, because you're not going to find a very good answer. Now, here our requirements are, Chief, be the safest community in the state of Arizona. He's accomplished that. Chief, I want you to have the best SRO program for our kids, because it's not about school shootings. It's about the bullying, it's about the drug awareness, it's about the counseling, and he's done that. Chief, we want you to be a community policing community, which means we want you to be proactive, not reactive. He's done that. So if we're #1 in every single department and we have a high level of public safety, why are we arguing on council about what the reporting structure is? If we were 25th, 26th, 30th out of 90 cities in the state, I would get that. But you got to ask yourself that fundamental question.
Sticking with the police department topic, year after year, like you said, the police budget is brought up, it's scrutinized, it's discussed, it's controversial, and even, as Pat said, it's headlines. What would it take to finally put this to bed and get this issue maybe off the topic every year?
Good question.
It is his turn.
Remind?
Isn't it, Pat?
I think it,
What would take it to be put to bed would be a full understanding by the community of the same information I'm telling you I would need. I do not equate #1 in all the categories as anything other than it is wonderful, but it does not necessarily directly relate to the cost. Another headline, folks, is reduced cost does not necessarily relate to less services. So, having the information to know where the money is going, what it's costing for those services, and have it transparent to the community would take a long step toward them understanding and not wondering about the mystery relative to the detail on the cost. We have a great police department, and guess what? They're all experts. They know where the money's going. In my world, we connect those people to the value analysis process of where the money's going. Believe me, I've spent many years in business doing that. You can look at things openly. You can value your decisions to make sure not only the money that comes in equals the money going out, but that you're getting the best bang for the buck in the middle. It doesn't relate just to the police, it relates to every function of the town.
I don't think you can ever get rid of that. And the reason I say that is that we live in a democratic society. There are just individuals who are just going to think that we have too much public safety. There are individuals that are going to think that we don't have enough open space. There are individuals that are going to think that we shouldn't support business. That's what the democratic process allows. So I don't see that as being a negative. I see that as having a healthy debate about, what's important. But I think you have to benchmark, really, i.e. specifically the police department, to what the general plan states, which is what the wishes of the residents are, with what our strategic plan as a council is. Every 2 years we update that, and really with what the future is going to hold, which is your voice, our future. And I think the advantage that I have, and I keep glossing over this fact, and maybe I shouldn't, we have looked at the expenditures. We have looked at efficiencies. We've looked at all the things that we need to take a look at, and I keep reverting back to this. If you have a police department budget of $12 million, and they provide the Dark House program where if you go on vacation, they'll pick up the papers, they have an adoptive business program, they have a strong SRO program, a community policing program, a Citizens Volunteer Assistance Patrol program. You talk about all the programs that they have. Again, I encourage you, divide $12 million by 41,011 residents, and you'll find per year that's how much it costs. So what's the point? What do we want to get that number down to? $289?
Dr. Hiremath, speaking on that topic, though, several times in a vote on the council, the current council, you voted against an audit. Why not go ahead and do a third-party audit and maybe lie this to rest?
Because the audits that we've done over the last 4 years, even though we've done an audit, the naysayers will still be critical of the audit, and basically we waste taxpayer monies. Regarding the town of Oro Valley, we do an audit every single year. We have our numbers audited. The department's budgets are checked, and they're benchmarked against really what our community requires. So do we want to have a community, no disrespect to the city of Tucson, but do we want to have a community and save money to where the crime rate reflects the city of Tucson? I don't think we do. Public safety, year in, year out, according to every single poll that I've seen, according to every single business owner, according to the seniors who deserve that right to feel safe in the community, who are children who deserve that right to be kids and not have to worry about the crime element, I think that's what we have to take a look at. And the audit, unless you ask those specific questions, I don't think you're going to find the answer because those questions aren't going to be asked.
Mr. Straney, your thoughts on the audit process?
I would, I guess, go to the mayor's example. $300 per person times the number of people in the house is perhaps a reasonable number, and people feel good with it. Well, maybe if it was $400, which is another $4 million, people would feel even better. My point is you need to look from a value analysis to people who are the experts in the field, who know where the money's going. And guess what? If they help in terms of getting more or better services for the same amount of money or less, it's good for them too, because they're town employees, and if the town is healthier and spending less for the same services or more, their job's more secure. So I think it's got a connection with everybody that's on the payroll as well.
Mr. Straney, this one's for you as well. In a July 11th newspaper article, you were quoted as saying the utilities tax was billed as a temporary tax, and the council has, quote, every responsibility to make moves to retire that tax, end quote. You suggested a way to deal with a drop in revenue would be to reduce spending without cutting services. How do you do that? What spending would you cut?
There was more to that quote, Dave, that you forgot to mention. I said on that tax, it was a tax that was sold as temporary. And yes, it even started before the current administration was in office, but it was increased after they came in. What I said was the day you get approval for that tax, and it's a temporary tax, in my world, that's the day when you start planning for the expiration of that tax. Not when people start saying, how long is a temporary tax? Is it within my lifetime? So that was the other half of that. Now, where would I go for it? More of what I just told you. Look where your money's going, justify where the dollars are going, keep the services or improve them, and I've done it over and over again.
Dr. Hiremath? Every responsibility to make moves to retire that tax, Mr. Straney said with his additions here. What do you do about that? Are there things that you cut, and frankly, is that a temporary tax?
You know, thank you for the question, because I forgot to address it during the first two forums. Pat made mention that our council did not implement that tax. That was the utility tax was implemented before us. It was supposed to have sunsetted with that council, and that council chose to remove that sunset clause. And so I feel no responsibility for having to sunset that tax without a plan. And so because the prior council may have struggled to come up with a solid plan, for us, just because a prior council said we need to sunset it, I don't think it would have been fair to handcuff us. Here's what we did, though. We actually took that 2% and made it 4%, which was commensurate with all the other surrounding communities. And with that additional 2%, we've created a very stable economic system, as stable gets, with taking that $3 million deficit and all of a sudden going to a slight surplus 4 years later. And what we're doing with that investment is investing in sales tax revenue, i.e. tourism, supporting business. We have the Shop Oro Valley campaign. We're changing our sign codes in order for the realtors on the audience, who that's your livelihood, is making money on selling homes. We're trying to create a better environment. Right now, roughly 32 cents of every single dollar comes from an outsider. And it's my goal is to just take that 32 cents and make it 48, 45, or 49, 50 cents on the dollar. So $1 is not a true dollar for our residents. And that's the strategy that we've used with the utility tax.
Mr. Straney, let's talk about taxes further. Do you see tax increases in Oro Valley's future the next 4 years? Should the community examine a property tax?
I'll give you a straight answer from my viewpoint. Possibility of property tax in the next 4 years? No. From what I would bring to the party, I can say that with a lot of assurity. I will tell you that I am slightly puzzled, but I don't have the in-depth detail on a town that can have a balanced budget, have a general plan that is followed, and they march to the general plan, and yet we spend contingency funds. And I know we have more than the minimum number of dollars in that than we need. That, to me, when it happens for less than serious, I don't mean serious, catastrophic reasons, it needs an explanation. It's fine to use those funds for self-funding of projects, et cetera, as long as the commitment's there to replace it. We do live on sales taxes for a large part of our general plan. We do not have property taxes, and for that reason, we need to be more sensitive than those other communities we're compared to that have primary and sometimes secondary property taxes. In a catastrophic event, they will still have money coming in. Maybe the banks will be paying a property tax instead of the homeowners, but you can bet our sales tax is going to take a bigger hit. So that's why I'm concerned about longer term.
Dr. Hiremath, do you see tax increases in Oro Valley's future the next 4 years? Should the community examine a property tax?
I don't think so. Keep in mind, we've come through and positioned ourselves through the worst recession in United States history without having to revert to a property tax. But I think that unless we continue that trend, unless we continue to support business, unless we continue to support those sales tax generating ideas or revenue sources, i.e. tourism, and that's why we took that money from the contingency and we're strategically investing in it to try to stabilize the sales tax. We all know the sales tax in general is tenuous at best. It's cyclical at best. So we are going to have peaks and valleys. But I don't see us reverting to a property tax. But it worries me because if we don't support the path that we're continuing on, i.e. trying to come up with more tourist ideas, trying to come up with how do you increase revenue and lower the residents' out-of-pocket costs, then I think we're going to be in deep trouble. And that's why I'm such a large advocate of business. I'm a large advocate of tourism, and I'm just a large advocate of the pathway that we've chosen to walk down over the last 4 years.
Mayor Hiremath, over the last year, you've been criticized on some of the actions you've taken, specifically against a couple of council members. One where you were in favor of a recall, and another where you've questioned where they live with the county attorney's office calling for an investigation. And then on another occasion, you've also stopped some discussion on the council when other council members ask for it. Can you kind of discuss why you take that role, and is that the position as a mayor you should be taking?
Well, I think the mayor's seat's a little bit different than the rest of the council seat. And the bottom line is that the mayor's seat is basically to control the decorum of how the council functions. But that only works under one condition, are when there's established actually two conditions, forgive me, established rules and processes that are in place, and if people choose to follow the rules. And the problem becomes, these are very serious infractions that were brought to my attention. And I'm very reactive by nature. I'm not proactive by nature on a lot of things. And, my father once taught me is that don't judge me by my reaction, judge me by the action that gave me the reaction. We had very serious allegations. We had serious issues with, I won't go into them, but for those of you who want to look into it, you can. And the problem is that when it gets to my desk, I have one of two choices. Ignore it. And then what happens in the future is who knew, how long did you know, why didn't you do anything about it? Or try to diplomatically take the best action that I can. The sad reality of the matter is that if you're an elected official, there are no sanctions we can place on each other, and that's why not only locally, statewide, regionally, nationally, you see elected officials running amok. And so my job is to, as best as I can, try to enforce a code of conduct. And I firmly believe, because we're elected officials that represent the people of the town of Oro Valley, our ethics and our code of conduct should be held to a higher standard than somebody who's not representing you.
Mr. Straney, you yourself have criticized Mayor Hiremath for some of his leadership as the mayor. Given the dynamic of the current council, what are some ways that you would mediate some of the dissension and handle some of these issues that have come up recently?
Well, I would say that I do something I've done a lot. You spend the hard work building the relationship with those that you find yourself connected with. You don't always get to pick those people, but I assure you, if you get to know them, and you are open, fair, and honest, you will find a common value in everybody that you're working with. Once you find that common value, you now have the ability to start building consensus around whether they're projects, issues, the way we're going to conduct our business, etc. But I think from my standpoint, stylistically, I think as the leader of the organization called Oro Valley and the person responsible for conducting business at the council level in terms of orchestrating most of the discussion, you need to build a relationship of at least understanding and hopefully trust of each other, even if you don't like each other. I don't approach it as doing it as a headline issue. I do it face to face, and if I had to, I would do it as a group locked in a room as long as we need to figure out what we all march to in terms of what makes us work and find that common connection. I mean, there's not a magic formula. It's hard work.
Let me close with one more question for these gentlemen. A big picture subject. Mr. Straney, name 3 specific things you'd like to accomplish in the next 4 years as mayor, and how would you do them?
3 specific things. Well, I'll pull them off the top of my head. I think that we do not serve this community well if we do not have an open, inviting atmosphere, and I mean that from the feeling of the folks in the community, to feel as if they're being heard. Yes, we have surveys. Yes, we have a lot of interaction, but you got to get past the feeling of not being able to come forward and put yourself out there and feel like somebody's actually going to hear you. So I guess I would make sure that in every case, I would give feedback to a resident that came to the council meeting, took their time to study and present something, and I would let them know, not me personally, but they would get a recognition of what what they said and the fact that they would get some sort of feedback as soon as we figured it out. The other thing I've already talked about, it's the proactive approach to the financials and where the money is going and making sure we're getting the best bucks and making sure we're adding to the sustainability and the financial base going forward without ever having to think about taxes. And beyond that, I want to see some sort of city center that includes activities for everyone and a place to go well beyond the athletic parks, et cetera, that we have. Those are great. They're wonderful. We need them. But I have a lot of feeling of we don't have a gathering point for some factions within, not factions, some elements within our community.
Thank you. Dr. Hiremath, 3 specific things you'd like to accomplish in the next 4 years, and how would you do them?
Community center, baseball fields, and a teen center. And I would do that exactly how we've done with everything else with the Town of Oro Valley Public Library, is striking a great partnership with Pima County, saving the town for $750,000. I would do that by creating partnerships such as the Regional Transportation Authority in our transportation system, saving the town over $200,000. I would do that by creating relationships with the city of Tucson and basically getting 1,500-acre cap Colorado Arizona Project Water to the town of Oro Valley. So I'm already in dialogues with Major League Baseball. I'm in dialogue with other community partners about maybe doing something as a community center, and I'm talking to private developers about trying to partner with us in the town of Oro Valley to try to create a teen center, and that's how I would do it.
Mr. Straney will have the first closing remark among the mayoral candidates, and he'll have 90 seconds. Settle in there, Pat, and go ahead.
Okay, thank you for being here tonight and most of you sticking in. I'm just going to kind of repeat to some degree what I've already said. I have a very strong desire to take Oro Valley to the next level of excellence. I want to establish a more collaborative, a more cooperative sense within the council and within the community. And to that extent, at least on the early end, perhaps inviting proactively some community members to play additional role relative to some of our issues. And some of those could be in our finance. There was a lot of discussion on finance and how we're spending our money, et cetera. There maybe is a need, since we're talking about business and business support, perhaps a citizens advisory group that's populated to a more than small extent by business people. Bottom line is, I want to be your mayor. I ask you to join me in my desire to help guide Oro Valley to the next level of excellence and to do that with sustainability and firm financial base in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, 4 years ago, I started with a phrase that really I tried to use to show people what it is that I want to try to do. And it goes, I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. And as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for what I can. I believe government has three fundamental roles. One is to provide services at an affordable cost. The second one is to partner with private businesses, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit, in order to better the lives of our residents. And I think the third one is to provide the opportunity to help residents who truly need help. Whether you've just lost your job, you've just lost your house, whether you're a child in the community, whether you're a senior in the community. These are serious times, and you need serious people. Under my leadership, again, we've went from a $3 million deficit to a $1.7 million surplus. And what we don't need is managers. We have a town manager. I am not running for the manager position. You know, the expectation you should have of your council is that we are going to be civil and work together. The expectation that you should have as your mayor is that you want somebody who's honest. You want somebody who's got integrity. You want somebody who's respectful. You want somebody who's responsible. You want somebody who's going to care for you. And I am that individual. Now, you also should look for a mayor who is going to reflect those values, and not only reflect those values, but you want a mayor who's going to challenge individuals on councils when they don't reflect the values of you. 4 years ago, my mandate to myself was when people look at the residents of the town of Oro Valley, I want them to see the mayor. When they look at the mayor, I want them to see you. And I think we've done that. You know, you want somebody who's going to be responsible. 4 of us on this council have led Oro Valley to the successes that we enjoy now. And that's myself, so I'd ask you to vote for me. And I'd encourage you to vote for Joe Hornet, Mary Snyder, and Lou Waters, because we 4 together have provided the framework to the quality of life that you enjoy now. We're going to continue on that path, given the opportunity. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Satish Hiremath and Patrick Straney. I want to give special thanks again to the church and all the great people in the back who helped us, to Thelma Grimes from Tucson Local Media, the Explorer Inside Tucson Business, to Alex Damrutis for waving the orange cards, and to all of you for being here. Thank you and have a good night.